Jimmy Clausen was the #1 player in the country for many different reasons, and he was just a tremendous passer, more advanced than most quarterbacks that I had seen up until that point. Now,
he was the #1 recruit in the country. They called him a top recruit of the decade.
They called him the LeBron James of high school quarterbacks.
Yes.
Kyler Murray, from the time he was a sophomore, was the most polished quarterback I've ever seen in high school.
Best player in high school football right here. If you're a high school player and you're watching this, you know it's the truth.
Justin Fields sucks. There's no other way you can script this.
Justin Fields is probably the most overrated player in all of football right now.
And this is 5 QBs who dominated in high school, but may have peaked too early in their careers and were unable to take what they did to the next level. Starting with this year's #1 draft pick.
The first pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Bryce Young.
The development of Bryce Young as a QB has been in works for quite some time now. He started off as a dual sport athlete who played travel basketball and football. By middle school, he was a local star for his talent on the football field and started to gain traction when the YouTube channel Under the Radar, currently with 500,000 subscribers, posted a video of him titled QB Bryce Young UTR Youth Spotlight 2015.
My name is Bryce Young, class of 2020. This is my Under the Radar Spotlight.
He was only 13 or 14 years old at the time and received his first offer from that video alone, as his coaches sent it out to a bunch of colleges, Cliff Kingsbury being the first to pull the trigger on him. Despite his size and high school voice,
I've been blessed to have such a great staff that I've been working with.
He was one of the most covered prospects in the country by the time he was a high school junior. But he spent his first 2 years at Cathedral High School before he was recruited by the football powerhouse Mater Dei. He split his time as a freshman with the senior QB before taking over the following year, finishing his career there with great numbers for a young QB. 4,800 yards, 55 touchdowns, with 440 on the ground and 12 touchdowns. His decision to transfer came from the likes of his notes app posted to Twitter, saying the decision to transfer from Cathedral to Mater Dei was a difficult one for my family and I. However, after much thought and prayer, I've decided to seize the opportunity and compete at the highest level to set myself up for the next level. And he posted that back in 2018. And by making the transfer, he made history before even stepping foot on a football field by becoming the first black quarterback to ever play in program history. But he spent his first spring practices getting hollered at by his position coaches. He was operating under the shadows of one of the greatest high school seasons of all time, a 2017 squad quarterbacked by 5-star recruit JT Daniels, who had a pro style type of play. They were telling him to step up in the pocket, slide this way, slide that way. But it wasn't until his head coach Bruce Rollinson stepped in and let it be known to leave him alone, saying, "Look guys, I don't know where Bryce is going sometimes or what he's doing, but every time he does something, magic happens, so stop. Nobody coaches Bryce Young. Bryce is his own coach, including myself. We're going to be cheerleaders now because he's going to make us look great." And that's exactly what he did. And this game right here against the IMG Academy was his first year with the Monarchs. And it was no better way to introduce yourself to a new football community than like he did. When the powerhouse IMG Academy visited Mater Dei, Bryce accounted for 4 total touchdowns, including a quarterback keeper with just over a minute left to take the lead. And that wasn't just a normal victory. IMG Academy had not lost a game since 2014, and over that 5-year stretch from 2014 to 2019, the Ascenders went 52-1, and that one came from the Monarchs. Bryce completed 21 of 30 passes for 309 yards and 3 passing touchdowns, and finished the game on his feet as the last minute was running out. Head coach Bruce Rollinson, who was in his 26th year of coaching that year and coached multiple great QBs, said Bryce was very high on his list. And after that impressive year, he gave Bryce the keys to the car, and he started to call his own plays, often acting like an offensive coordinator, finishing his career with a top 10 high school QB of all time type of numbers, with 13,000 yards, 152 passing touchdowns, and 21 interceptions, with his highest only being 6 within a season. He ran for 1,000 yards and 26 touchdowns, only losing 6 games throughout 4 years. Before his stellar career at Alabama, he committed to playing on Saturdays in the fall at the Memorial Coliseum for USC. But from playing with the varsity squad as a high school freshman at Cathedral to transferring up a division and starting for the top team in the country to playing at Alabama and starting there as well, he succeeded despite his height and other difficult challenges like the competition. But with the level of competition obviously not the same as high school to the NFL, Bryce seems to be struggling a bit and not getting off at the same start as he did as a little freshman. With the current record of 2-13 with 2,600 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, Bryce has been sacked 53 times, being ranked the second most QB in the NFL right now. That once Swifty QB is nowhere to be found, but I want to take this time for a little dialogue in the comments. What do y'all think is going on in Carolina? And why aren't they clicking? Who is it to blame? If there is anyone. But Bryce and the next QB has a similar football journey. Just like Bryce, JT Daniels hit the scene in middle school playing for the same Little League team, i.e. Ducks. He also had under the radar spotlights while in the 8th grade. At an early age, JT knew he wanted to go to Mater Dei after he saw a game featuring the big time state rival Mater Dei versus Servite, and how Coach Bruce coached his team. And after seeing how many elite QBs at travel camps were old for their grade, his dad Steve and mom Allison opted to have JT repeat the 8th grade as a homeschooler, in part so that he can buff up his 150-pound frame and start his training for the next level of competition at Mater Dei. And when it was finally time for him to step on the field for Mater Dei, JT grew to about 6'1" and gained about 40 pounds. Being about $195, he took over as the starting QB in the first month of his freshman season and threw for 33 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions in 12 games. He also impressed his coaches with his extensive note-taking in meetings and film sessions. As a sophomore, he gained the trust from his head coach and started calling his own plays that year. He wound up completing 74% of his passes and finishing with 67 touchdowns against 6 picks. He went on to play one more year of high school football, totaling just 3 years, because he reclassified and left early to begin his college career. Shortly after the season, JT released a slick video on Twitter announcing that he would follow the Mater Dei quarterback tradition and commit to. During his time at Mater Dei, he threw for a cool 12,000 yards, 152 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions, with a QBR of 139. He even took home numerous individual awards in his final season at Mater Dei, having an undefeated junior year, becoming a state champ, including the Gatorade Football Player of the Year. With a high school career like this, JT received a 5-star grade and became the nation's #1 recruit. In 2018, he began the USC's fall camp as part of a 3-way QB competition before officially winning the job, making him the only second true freshman in school history to start a season opener. In his first season with the Trojans, the offense did alright, going 5-7, and Daniels started 11 of 12 games, missing 1 due to a concussion. But after a shaky spring in 2019, he was named the starter again and found himself on a preseason watch list for the Davey O'Brien Award, an accolade given to the best QB for the season. A lot of hype was going into the season, but sadly, JT didn't make it through the first game of the year. In the second quarter, the Trojan season opener against Fresno State, he tore his ACL after being sacked. He was ruled out and the freshman stepped up and balled out and led the team to an 8-4 record and won the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. Knowing his time was likely up, JT decided to transfer, this time going to Georgia ahead of the 2020 season. In a total of 7 games for the Bulldogs in a 2-season span, during that time he finished with an undefeated record as a starter and was a huge factor in the Bulldogs' victory over the Cincinnati Bearcats in the 2020 Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. But going into the 2021 season, Daniels was expected to help the Bulldogs in their 41-year national championship drought. His season was unfortunately cut short, however, as nagging injuries would cause him to be benched in favor for Stetson Bennett. And after that year, he hit the transfer portal again, this time going to West Virginia, where he would appear in 10 games and boast a 4-6 record. He would once again enter the transfer portal ahead of the 2023 season, where he would join the Rice Owls. And in his lone season as the starting QB, he led the Owls to the most wins in a year since 2015 and completed 181 of 287 for 2,400 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions in 9 games. Daniels finished his collegiate career playing in 31 games with 9,000 total passing yards, 66 touchdowns, and 25 interceptions, spanning over 6 years with 4 different teams, a total difference from his start at Mater Dei. According to sources, the former QB was advised by his doctors that it was time for him to hang up his cleats due to all his injuries over the years, and now he plans to pursue his career in coaching.
And I handled adversity that I hadn't handled before. Like my trajectory in high school was like pretty much straight up. I was a Gatorade National State Player of the Year, and then went to college and went straight down. Like
a 14-year-old, 5'5" sophomore was thrown into the game after halftime back in 2012. And from that point to 2014, Allen High School never looked back. In week 5 of his sophomore year, Kyler went in to help the Eagles in a tough game against Capel, who would ultimately finish with a dub. But going in, he put up impressive numbers and impressed his coaches and teammates. stage. And from there, he won the starting job, and the senior quarterback moved to receiver, where he had previously played. Ever since Kyler stepped onto the field as a sophomore, he was the most polished QB Allen, Texas, and its surrounding areas have ever seen in high school football.
Kyler Murray, from the time he was a sophomore, was the most polished quarterback I've ever seen in high school. The fastest player I've ever seen running in pad. He had such vision and smarts, and he had an arm like a cannon.
That year, Kyler led an offense that averaged 41 points per game in the regular season and pitched 2 shutouts on defense. They scored 50+ points twice and 67 points in a win over McKinney, and in the playoffs, they averaged 48 points per game. And as a sophomore, he won his first championship against Houston Lamar, 35-21. 2013, the offense kept rolling, averaging 49 points per game. And in the playoffs, they was blowing teams out, averaging 52 points per game. And he won his second state championship against Pearland, 63-28. 2 state champs back to back. Why not go for a three-peat? In 2014, that's what they did, averaging 50 points per game in the regular season and scored 50+ points in each of their first 3 games. During the playoffs, they averaged 47 points per game. And he won his 3rd straight championship against Cypher Ranch, 46-16, and was named the Offensive Player of the Year by USA Today. Kyler is known for his ability to extend plays like he does now for the Cardinals, and like he did at Oklahoma. He could run around for 30 yards before any of them was positive, just back there dodging defenders. But his most famous play yet came in the semifinals in his junior season, where his undefeated record was on the line as they were down in the 4th quarter. The Eagles were down 15 against arch rival DeSoto with just about 8:30 left to go in the game. He drove Allen to 2 touchdowns, with the second one being with just under 30 seconds left in the game. And it was a 2-point conversion pass to take the lead when Murray rolled all the way to the right, buying time, and then heaved it all the way back to the left corner of the end zone for his receiver. Another time his record was on the line was his senior year. Allen was down 28-10 in 8 minutes to go in the 3rd quarter, but that was enough time for Kyler to get in his bag and executed an amazing 6 straight touchdown drives that turned into a disaster 52-34 win, finishing with 406 yards and 115 rushing. Kyler was a star early and was always in front of the cameras and the microphones. Everybody just wanted to know how that boy was so damn good. And over his 3 years in undefeated seasons, some of those wins come over the likes of NFL greats like Myles Garrett, Jamal Adams, and Ed Oliver. Kyler's high school career is also in the books as the top 10 quarterback of all time, with numbers like 10,000 passing yards, 117 touchdowns and 21 interceptions, 4,100 rushing yards, 69 rushing touchdowns, for a total of 14,000 all-purpose yards and 186 total touchdowns. He finished his career as a 3-time state championship, 2-time National Player of the Year, and Gatorade Player of the Year in 2015. Kyler came into the league after winning the Heisman, after posting great numbers at OU. After being the #1 draft pick, he won Rookie of the Year with numbers like these. But football is a team sport, and they finished that year with this record. His production on the field kind of mirrored over the next 2 years before having a season-ending non-contact injury, tearing his ACL. Many fans, sports analysts, former players, and current players don't like the style of Kyler's play. Even former player LaShawn McCoy said Kyler still plays like a high school quarterback.
Trash, overhyped, overrated. He put like a high school player. He does a circle, the ballerina circle, then goes left, goes right, turns all the way around again, then looks for a wide receiver. He's trash.
I mean, that's where he succeeded the most, but that style of play with no real preparation does not fly in the league. What do y'all think? Is Kyler time in Arizona almost up? Let me know.
43-0 in high school in Texas. Nobody else has done it. Go to college, win the Heisman, get drafted #1 overall to the NFL, get drafted #9 overall to MLB. Again, no one's ever done it. I'm not 6'7", 230. I don't throw the ball 85 yards. Those things you can't accomplish if you don't take the game serious, if you don't prepare the right way.
But for this next guy, nicknamed the Golden Arm, time was up before he even started in the NFL. Jimmy Clausen, the kid nicknamed the Golden Arm, also known as the LeBron James of the football field, back in 2004 at Oaks Christian, the blonde-haired California native was considered a possible once-in-a-generation talent. Jimmy's older brother, Casey, was a 4-year starter at Tennessee, and he ended his career in 2003 as the second most prolific passer in school history behind Peyton Manning. His other brother Rick, a quarterback who signed with LSU in 2001 and then transferred to Knoxville in June of 2003, was an on and off starter again for the orange and white. But the youngest of the bunch, Jimmy, was the best. At least that's what his brothers in 46 schools that offered him a scholarship seemed to think. Back then, many saw the arm of John Elway, the composure of Tom Brady, and the quick release of Joe Namath. He kept the ball high and tight, which gave him a short, accurate, and crazy consistent motion. Just like JT Daniels, who we talked about earlier, Jimmy teammates would sometimes tease him about how old he was, because not only did he start kindergarten late at 6 years old, he repeated the 6th grade to gain maturity, says his mom. Just for these two, because they were a year or two older than their competition, is that why they dominated so early? What y'all think? But Jimmy is also the second player on this list to go undefeated all 4 years, going 42-0 as a high school starter. He threw for over 10,000 yards and a state record of 146 touchdowns, with 49 of those touchdowns being made during his senior year. He was named USA's Today Offensive Player of the Year as a senior and was rated by Scouts.com as the nation's #4 overall prospect in the class of 2007. His commitment announcement was more flashy and hyped than most players when being drafted. He pulled up to a rented out ballroom in a stretched out limousine. When he hopped out, Jimmy caught the first glimpse into his future as cameras flashed and microphones up to his face in order to listen to where the nation's most talked about recruit will be playing college ball.
I think you all know why I'm here today. And I'm very excited and proud to say that in January I'll be attending the University of Notre Dame.
There was nothing more on Jimmy's mind than multiple championship rings and bringing the Irish back to glory. Unfortunately, that's not how the story wrote itself, because most outsiders assumed Jimmy was in it for himself and the single player accolades and being the future #1 pick with heavy contract demands. Ultimately, he was the starter by the second game of his freshman season, but struggled as part of a 3-9 team, winning just one of his first 6 starts and getting benched in late October. He threw for 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns against 6 interceptions. As a sophomore for the Irish, he threw for 3,100 yards, 25 touchdowns against 17 INTs, finishing off that year with a 7-6 record. His best year came as a junior, throwing for 3,700 yards, 29 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions, but the Irish went 6-6. That's when the head coach Charlie Weis was fired. Notre Dame fans watched the Golden Arm throw the football at lightning speed for his 3 years in the blue and gold, sometimes showing glimpses of talent that no quarterback had ever shown. However, much too often those glimpses of amazement never seemed to be enough. The only thing Jimmy left with after his 3 years in South Bend was the record holder for career losses for a starting quarterback. In 3 years, Jimmy had 1 winning season, 1 bowl win, and no Heisman Trophy or national championships. He declared for the NFL draft following that season, ending a mediocre college career.
With the 48th pick in the 2010 NFL draft, Carolina Panthers select Jimmy Clausen.
His pro career was over just 5 years later. Kinda decent knowing that the average career is only 3 years. Today, the 36-year-old works as a real estate developer.
Next possession, and that is Jimmy Clausen's pass, tipped and picked off 95 yards in the game. 4th quarter of 4th down plays. Bears up 14-3. Jimmy Clausen's pass.
In the 3rd quarter, Jimmy Clausen picked by Jabari Greer.
And 2nd and 11 from their 19. The pass is tipped by Jimmy Clausen, tipped.
Clausen picked off by Glover Quinn.
4th down, go.